Welcome to Good Sex at NYU, a podcast about sex, relationships, health, and mental health, in a sex-positive space. So if you're looking for something serious, sometimes funny, and always sex-positive, then you're in the right place. I'm Danielle Elleman. I use she/her pronouns, and I'm the Associate Director of Sexual and Relationship Respect Services. This is Good Sex at NYU, your space for sex-positive conversations about relationships, sex, and well-being. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Good Sex at NYU. Today we are joined by Kate Rockey-Harris, Senior Director of Career Development, and Victoria DiMonicas, Senior Associate Director of Undergraduate Career Development. You're here to share your wisdom with all things related to career development and job search, and to tell us a little bit more about the Wasserman Center at NYU. So it's been too long since I have made any kind of attempt to apply for a job or look for something. I know the market changes all of the time, but I also remember it being really stressful and overwhelming for me. And a lot of students that I see also find it difficult, challenging, lots of pressure, but maybe not for everyone. So can you just share with us maybe some of the things that you notice are some of the biggest challenges when folks are out there looking for jobs? Because this is like high time for students to be looking for jobs.
You want to kick us off?
Sure. I think something that can be challenging for students is just getting started. So sometimes when we're talking to students, they'll be spending a lot of time searching or a lot of time like on their resume perfecting it even, or trying to get it absolutely perfect. And a lot of times we're encouraging them like just submit it into the universe, right? Like you don't want to hold yourself back from the application process. So sometimes actually submitting an application and getting that started can be challenging, I think, for students.
Yeah. Definitely. I think trying to figure out how engaged or not engaged to be with the process. So sometimes, to Victoria's point, if you're really stuck on one particular application and perfecting everything, when you get it submitted, you feel very attached to that application. It makes it hard to move on in the process, do other applications. So kind of moderating your enthusiasm and your efforts to continue to do multiple applications can be challenging as well.
Yeah. And what kind of ways in which do you help folks to figure out like what kind of job they're looking for? Because I feel like sometimes that's really hard too, because you get out of undergrad and there's potentially a lot of options depending on your degree.
Yes.
And so it can sometimes, again, I'm sort of projecting my feelings, I think it would be really overwhelming to be like, where do I even begin to look? Because if I'm like business, where do I start? Or if I'm, liberal arts, like where do I start with what kind of job I'm qualified for?
I think at least for entry-level positions, students can really apply to things that they're interested in. They don't need to meet 100% of the qualifications. So a lot of times students will screen themselves out of the process, which we're really often coaching them to, again, if you're meeting like maybe 70% of what the job application is asking for in terms of skills and qualifications, and you feel like you have those skills to do the actual job, like we're really encouraging you to just apply. So, and that could be a range of industries. That could be certain companies that they're really attractive to. So there's a lot of ways you could approach the search. And often when we're working with students one-on-one, it is about kind of assessing their strategy and then giving them some other options or other ways to kind of expand that, because it can be overwhelming to, again, start that search.
Yeah, definitely. So we have various tools, like exploration tools for different degree levels. If someone's like, I have no idea, like at all, what I would like to do. And that can give them kind of job families to like start with, and kind of tip them in towards those skills or areas that they might really enjoy. So do they like working with people? Do they love working with data? Do they love a job that kind of changes every day or something that's more consistent? Sometimes just knowing those simple things can be challenging. Personally, I love to read a good job description. I feel like I read it and I'm either excited or I'm like, oof, no. And I find that to be very helpful. Of course, coming from the career perspective. So I probably love a job description more than most people.
I was just going to ask then, like, what makes a good job description?
I feel like to me, it's like I read it and I'm excited by it. Like I could envision myself doing it, Or if I knew someone who did the role and I was like envious that they had it, I'm like, oh, then this one might be for me. Versus if I read it and I'm like, ooh, that's not good. I'm like, okay, that's a no apply. And kind of see what kind of trends you have. You know, what's standing out to you? What do you like to see in that job description? How do you find more of those?
Yeah. I feel like I used to get really stuck on cover letters.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share a little bit more about like secrets into writing a really good cover letter or how important it is? I know on the other side of hiring people, you know, sometimes I would have a system of like looking at the resume first and then reading. And sometimes like if there were big errors in it, I'd be like, nah, I'm going to pass. Right. But if I saw someone's passion in the cover letter, I might overlook like a spelling error here or there. You know, it's like, oh, I really see their passion. But I'm curious from your perspective, like how important it is and what kind of recommendations you have for that.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the role now. So broadly, cover letters are not required for every position anymore. And some recruiters will even tell us like we don't use them because, you know, sometimes they can sound too similar for one another and they're not like really standing out. But definitely if a cover letter is required or a part of the application process, it is really great to make sure it sounds unique. Like you're not just copying a template or, you know, using ChatGPT to write the whole thing. We definitely do not encourage that. So making sure that you are personalizing it to why you're interested in the role, why you're a good fit for that position, like what about your past experience actually connects you to that role. Like when you can see someone took a little bit of time, I think that stands out if the cover letter is part of the process.
I guess kind of to your point, like you don't really know what they're going to use it for. So you kind of have to write it for all of those things. Like, is it a chance to further explain some of your enthusiasm, which enthusiasm can't always come across on a resume? Is it a chance to explain to what you were saying, Victoria, like maybe your most recent experience wasn't in this particular industry job function, but you do have previous experience. So having that opportunity to elaborate can really showcase why you're applying to this role. I think us personally, we've used them as like, I don't want to say tiebreakers, but if two applications seem similar and then we look at the cover letter, sometimes one is like much more well written, much more excited about the opportunity, more tailored, and that definitely makes an impact. And
it is a writing sample.
Yeah,
it does show how someone is able to write, which is super important in, I would say, any industry. And I do think like any kind of mistake is bad. In a resume or a cover letter. It's really, there's little excuses now when you have so many tools that can help you with that. So I do think recruiters look at that as a big red flag.
Yeah. And you brought up a good point that, you know, me and my age has not had to experience at this point, but like AI, ChatGPT, like how is that impacting the job search and the market out there?
Sure. I mean, I think that AI is definitely evolving all the time. And I think to the students' advantage, they do have access to a lot of different resources that can be really helpful in the search. Like being able to quickly copy a job description into some form of AI and have it tell you what are all of those skills that they're looking for in like a quick top 10. Like that's a great use of something like AI where it's not good at writing a whole, you know, document like a cover letter, but it can tell you what areas to focus on. And like, that's a huge advantage to students who didn't have, or, you know, we didn't have tools like that, certainly writing.
We were using highlighters.
Right. So like using it. And I also think that companies expect students to be somewhat competent or familiar with AI because they are now like experiencing it. So I think there's that too. So a student could use that to their advantage too in the interview process, or by being able to articulate how you could use AI as part of the job in a ethical way that could really make them stand out compared to other applicants.
Yeah, I think we've also recommended kind of using it as a check. Like, here's my cover letter, here's the job description. Are there any areas that I'm not talking about what they're identifying? To your point earlier, Victoria, I think if it comes across as very stereotypical or generic, it can read as AI really quickly. So that's what we always try to have students steer away from. It's pulling, the same information from the internet. So if everyone is submitting that job description and saying, write me a cover letter, they come out very similar, especially if you're using the same AI tool. So being very mindful of that. It also, there is no like truth parameter in AI. It's just pulling what's out there, and there's no guarantee that what's out there is correct information. So I think the other thing we warn students is if it's saying this is a good cover letter, why does it think that's a good cover letter? Is it because someone just put it on their website and titled it good cover letter? Like what actually makes it a good cover letter? So maybe not relying on it as the sole source of truth. I like to take my own content and put it in and say, hey, check this for me. Is there a way I could write this that more articulates that there's a lot of strategy behind this thought process? Or how could I make this sound more professional if it was very task-based? And sometimes it comes back with something where I'm like, no. And then sometimes it comes back and I'm like, oh, I like that phrase, or maybe I'll use that word. So it can also be kind of like inspirational, even if you're not using it for the full thing. Or what's a better way to say this? But yeah, I think full documents, no.
I think with AI too, it makes the interview even more important.
Yes.
Like your resume and your cover letter or any documents that are submitting are only getting you to the interview. Right? They don't get you the job. Yeah. You have to be able to sell yourself in any interview format. Like you have to be able to articulate those skills and competencies and qualifications that you have, and be able to talk about your experience in a way that connects with the employer, and also be personable.
Yes.
Be, someone that they want to hire. Like that interview is where you're actually getting the job offer.
Yes.
I feel like I have some more questions about that, but I want to go back first to since we're talking about the documents, resumes. Are there tips or tricks, to writing a really good resume? I feel like it's been a really long time since I had, but it used to be there's a certain system that you use. And they even I think right when I got out of grad school or undergrad, I was putting my GPA. Are those things that you still have to, put on your resume? Are there things that you don't recommend?
Yeah, it's funny you brought up GPA. GPA is being really, I would say, used less and less as a screening tool, right? That is a big question that we get from students. So if you don't want to feature your GPA, do not put it on your resume.
Yep.
Only add really anything to your resume that is going to be an asset for you. But GPA is not required on a resume at all. If an employer wants to see your GPA, they're going to ask you for something that proves it, like an unofficial transcript. You could write anything on your resume. So if they actually care about GPA, they're going to ask you in a different format that you'd be able to prove.
I guess thinking back to when we first started at Wasserman, there were many different types and formats of resumes. There's a skill-based resume. There was the one that followed more of the traditional hierarchy or templated resume that you're talking about. And I think that those skill-based resumes have become less common. I actually have not seen a skill-based resume in a very long time.
You're talking about in terms of format.
Yes.
Because you should definitely have skills on your resume.
Oh, yes.
But
yes.
Yeah, you're talking about
Good
the way it's laid out.
Yeah, so I think it is a little more templated now. And part of it is the way that resumes are digital, but also that people are using applicant tracking software. It might be read by a digital tool. And those traditional headers really help it pick up information. You don't want to confuse it. So if there's graphics or pictures, or you've used a non-traditional format, it can actually be tricky. If a human is the first one scanning that document, you're probably fine, but usually it might not be a human. So we've definitely leaned, I'd say, more into a traditional resume structure, ironically, that's templated out with common names for headers. That keeps it very simplistic, regular simplistic font, really for the readability.
Right, because it's not necessarily human who's on the other end of that.
Yeah.
You want to get past the machine.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And it has to look organized.
Yes.
Because to your point, if a human is looking at it, and I know we look at a lot of resumes, if it's disorganized, that's an immediate turnoff. So it has to look inviting and easy to read, and with that, consistent headers, one font, no colors, just really simple formatting works best. Focus on the content, what you're writing. The experience is what they want to learn about, not be distracted by a lot of clutter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that might also tell an employer something about the person.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so it's like you're sending these subtle messages
Yes.
in like what you're presenting to them before you actually meet them.
Yep.
Yeah. When it comes to interviews,
Mm-hmm.
those are really important. Again, lots of anxiety that comes up for me when I go through them. I also feel like I do really well. And so then I don't really prepare as much. That's probably not good. I'm like, I got this. You know, so like I have some friends who like search for jobs and they're like spend like hours preparing like for the interview. And I'm like, why do you prepare for an interview? So I'm curious if you can share with us a little bit more about how someone should prepare for an interview, what kind of like sample questions that they should be thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it does get easier. Like over like the more interviews you do.
So you're telling me I'm not terrible.
As you interview more, I do think people get more comfortable or it gets a little bit easier. But I also know it's a big stressor for students, the interview process, and there's a lot weighing on it. So I understand that. My biggest tip is just to practice and practice aloud. Yes. We have tools at Wasserman that can help you do like virtual mock interviews where it does record you. And while you might not want to watch yourself in a mock interview, it tells you a lot about how you're doing. So that's a great tool. You don't have to share it with anyone else. You don't have to, it's not a public thing, but just answering some questions aloud in a format, it can really get you more comfortable.
Mm. Yeah, that would be helpful. What are some of the common questions that you get in an interview? Are there like, again, I feel like way back when there were some standard questions that you would often get. I'm curious if there are any standard ones that you often hear students coming in, or if there's ones that are in this mock interview that you often like will have them practice.
I think there's always that intro question. So it might be worded many different ways, but you're always going to have to introduce yourself in some capacity at the start of the interview and explain why you're interested in that role and why you want to work at that place. And I love that because you know it's coming. And like to the point of practicing, that's something that you can practice really well. And regardless of how it's asked, you would still want to tell them the answer to all of those things when you're introducing yourself. And then I think it kicks it off as a nice start and helps calm your nerves because you answer it well because you know it's coming. And then you're like, I got this. So I still think that intro question is always there. It really, like, depending on the industry, it's hard to say what standard questions might be. Consulting can lean case interview wise, which are very unique questions. Some, if you're working a lot with people, can have role playing questions, but that would be ridiculous if you're interviewing for some other industries. So the questions themselves can really vary. I think what we always say is to try to think of scenarios or past experiences or projects that you've done that could answer a lot of different questions and that you want to highlight. So if someone's asking about like a time you showed innovation or a time you came back from a mistake or a time that you were really proud of something, having just examples in your mind that you could use and tailor for each of those questions that you want to tell that story is important. So a lot of times when I'm practicing, I just practice the stories. Like I want to be sure I mention to them this specific project because it showcased how much I love this certain facet that I know is important to this role. So I practice telling that story. And then regardless of what questions are asked in the back of my mind, I'm like, when can I plug in this story? When is this a good answer? So I think having those stories that you really want to highlight in the back of your head is helpful and practicing all of them out loud.
Yeah, I think the stories is key. And I also think it's fair game for them to ask you anything on your resume.
Yes.
So a way to practice for that interview is even have someone else ask you things about your resume. Like, tell me about that internship you had 2 summers ago. If you can't like readily like say not exactly what's on the resume, but what you learned from that, what was maybe a key project you did, how did you work with others, like just information about it. If you can't remember that, you have to brush up on like any types of experiences. And then to Kate's point, knowing, well, which ones do you really want to highlight? Because you might not have to talk about all of them, but like which is the ones that maybe highlights your strengths or really is most relevant to the role that you're applying to. You want to bring those up.
I feel like, I don't know, sometimes we get so anxious. Well, I'm going to say me. that like you lose like your train of thought
Mm-hmm.
in an interview, or you kind of go a little blank. What do you suggest? Are there ways that you encourage folks to come back from that moment, or to like calm themselves? I mean, as a therapist, I would be like, okay, just take a deep breath.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, like, what are some tips that you might give to someone who's going into an interview about something like that?
Yeah.
That definitely happens.
100%.
For me, it's just I keep talking, but I lose track of the question. And if you find that you're just still talking, just stop talking. Literally just pause for like 10 seconds, see if that helps you remember what the question is, to either make a point or just be done with that question. Like if you're losing. It's also, though, okay to ask someone to repeat the question. If you're, you can't think of anything because you weren't listening in the second because you were too nervous. So you can just take a moment, ask them to repeat it, and that's totally fine.
Yeah. We always say when we're interviewing someone ourselves, if they didn't fully answer the question, we're like, well, can you tell me a little more about XYZ? But I think that same logic can apply if you're the person being interviewed. So you can give an answer and you're like, oh, maybe that was too short. You can always say, is there anything I can elaborate on that would help you with this? And then they can actually give you some guidance, which helps you answer the question more correctly. I wouldn't use that for every question, but if there's that one where you feel like, oh no, I'm a little lost. Yes.
Yeah. Would you ever just acknowledge like the nerves in the room, or how does that come across if you do say, oh, I'm a little nervous? I think I just sort of, went blank for a moment. Like, how do you approach that? Do you advise that students might just acknowledge the anxiety in the space, or not so much?
I think it depends on the industry and
Yeah.
the interview.
And the person's personality.
Yeah.
Like if they could play that off in a way that is genuine to them.
Yeah.
And then remain confident, right? Like you don't want it to derail.
Yes.
So I think it's about whatever strategy for them, if that's like natural.
Yeah.
But then kind of take it back to, you're always wanting to just show your like really interest in the company and that you have all of those qualifications. So if you can kind of get back to that point.
Yeah. I think we've also seen, which I'd be interested to know your thoughts on this, but we've also seen people who will bring in something to write on. And then they'll say, before we get started, is it okay if I write down some notes when you're asking the question? And maybe it's like the writing that helps them commit it to memory, but maybe it's also just having something to look back to. But I feel like it kind of disarms. You anticipate that they're going to write. It gives them a moment to pause and think while they're writing down. So I think if you're someone where that occurs frequently, it can be like a good mechanism to use. And it doesn't derail really or distract if you're the interviewer. You kind of know they're writing it down. When they stop writing, they answer.
Yeah, but you would definitely want to address that.
Yes.
And ask, is that okay?
Yeah.
Right? Like you wouldn't want to just start pulling out your notebook and like writing a novel, but like, do you mind if I, pull out my notebook and, jot a few things down, like right at the beginning? And if they're okay with that, then
Yeah.
That's helpful. I don't think I would have thought of that.
yeah. And for some students, it would help
It does.
them like kind of process that information.
Yeah. Are there other like tips in an interview that you kind of wish that students would know going into an interview? Because I wouldn't have brought out the notebook.
I like the one that you have about when it starts.
Oh, so my advice about interviews, it starts from the moment like you get the email to interview, right? Like your whole interaction, how quickly you reply, you being very polite and kind to anyone in the building, like it's the entire experience. It's not just the 30 minutes of Q&A back and forth. Is your impression, and all of that I think speaks volumes to like you as a candidate, and often that's remembered as someone, what time you arrived, what happened in the lobby, like so making sure that kind of you're putting your best self forward in that process and realizing that other people may be observing how you are kind of from the beginning.
Yeah. And I think you've also always said like even up until you send the thank you.
Yes.
So like it's it's till you get that first, we'd like to speak to you, however that comes through that.
Yeah. When should you send it? The thank you.
I mean, I'm like an early thank youer.
Yeah.
Is it email or do you do cards anymore? Again, that's old schooly.
I do like an email because you never know how fast the search is going. Yeah. I think a card does come across nicely, but it's so hard to tell like what their search timeline is.
Yeah.
And I would hate for someone to miss getting the thank you. But I feel like if I interview in the morning, I'm sending that thank you that afternoon.
I love a same day.
Yeah. If I interview late in the day, I might do like a save send for like early the next day. But yeah.
But they might be talking about candidates
right after.
Like later that day. You don't know where they are. You could be the very last candidate. Like you just don't know. And if you're the only one who didn't send a thank you, it can make an impression.
Yeah.
Yeah. You reminded me of when I would interview people, and we would definitely include our receptionist who would greet them. And we're like, what were your thoughts on this? And she's like, well, like, she was kind of rude to me.
Yes.
You know? Well, I don't know. They came in like very like flustered all over the place, and like tossing around this, that, and the other, and like trying to get settled. And so they seemed a little like not organized.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're definitely including folks in the process of like, just share with me what your thoughts were.
Yeah.
And taking that into consideration. And definitely if someone waited like a day or two to thank you for the interview, I was like, they don't seem that interested.
Yeah. There's a lot more in-person interviews again too, especially at maybe later stages in the process. And I like arrive at a coffee shop very close by, right? Like you can arrive as early as you want there. Then to your point, like get yourself collected, change your shoes, whatever you're going to do so that you do kind of enter and feel confident.
Yeah. That's a good point. Like, is there, again, I'm saying standard, but obviously every industry is probably different, but you were just talking about multiple phases.
Yes.
Like, how many phases are there? I had a friend who went through like 5 phases, and I'm like, man, you should have got paid for all the work you did.
It really does vary by industry, by role, but I would expect more than one round of interview for many positions, even sometimes internships. It is very common to have either like a phone screen, a virtual screening, like where it's maybe a more brief, either conversation with HR or conversation with the hiring manager that's just kind of general questions, get to know maybe their interests. They might be interviewing more people and then have rounds from there. And then depending on the industry, there could be other elements like a project or a test to, some of their technical skills. Like there could be lots of different parts of the interview process that's not just a behavioral, like one-on-one or panel in a room like with other people. But there are still a lot of that too.
Yeah, I feel like this was like a presentation and a panel and paper, and you're like, wow, that's a lot. Glad therapist, you don't have to do that. Test your skills. Give me a little like therapy right now.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
I love that.
Oh yeah, thankfully.
Oh, can I add something to the thank you interview perspective? One of my tricks that I recommend, because sometimes in my mind after the interview, I have trouble remembering in an interview, especially if it's what we're talking about is a panel or like a group interview when there's more than one person. Yes. I have trouble remembering who said what. And you really want those thank you emails to have an element of personalization. So right after the interview, I write down like their initials, or if it's not their initials, like maybe you can't remember their name, like some identifying feature. I'm like blue shirt. And then I write like a couple of words about what they spoke about that like resonated with me. So I can use that in the thank you. Because I find if I wait like an hour, I kind of lose track of who said what. And I was like, ooh, there was something they said. But I like write that down. And then if you're coming back for like second rounds or third rounds and you re-see these people, you already kind of know what's important to them, what they may have already brought up. So that can be helpful for the preparation and to ease some of those nerves there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's also just really good when it comes to remembering names and being sure to like follow up. But I'm thinking, I remembered my question, which I'm so excited about. When you go into an interview, like how important is it to have like questions for them as like the job role or position? I mean, obviously they'll have like, some description obviously in the job description, but then they probably will also share a little bit more about like what the role entails, but like how important is it to have like additional questions for the people that are interviewing you?
Very. Like definitely ask some questions. Like when they say, do you have any questions for us? Do not say, nope, like I'm good. Like that's not good. And you can prepare those Like, to Kate's point, you can come in, and we've even seen people, like, pull them out. They might ask, like, do you mind if I, open up my questions or something like that? But at least I would say have, like, 3 to 5 questions prepared. I think, but take the interviewer's lead in how many you should be asking. Yeah. So if it's, like, at the end of the time, and maybe there's only time for one, pick the one that you really want answered. Don't be like, and I have one more, and just one more. Like, take the lead from the person interviewing you, like, how many questions seems appropriate to ask.
And you can always end with, is it okay if I send you additional questions that may come up over email or something that alludes to there being more?
Yeah. I like asking at the end, like, if I'm out of questions, or it just feels like I should end my questions, like, what are the next steps in the process?
Yep.
Because unless they already shared that, it's a good, like, way for them to also wrap up and give you some insight into, like, when should I be hearing back?
Yes.
Because they might give you some clues on, we're still interviewing candidates for the next few weeks. Okay, that means it's going to be a while. Or, like, we're going to be making offers soon. And then if you don't hear back, like, that's really gives you some chance to follow up and kind of reiterate that interest.
Yeah, yeah. Because I think you want to leave sort of knowing what possibly the time frame is, and like, it can be a little anxiety provoking, or kind of like ghosting when it comes to dating. You're like, what happened to them? Like, right. But I also think that bringing in the notebook, right, it can help you with writing down names, can help you with some of these things just to sort of follow up. So I think that's a really good tip that I hadn't really thought of. So I appreciate that. And any other things that we've missed so far with interviews, either for jobs or for internships? Because I know a lot of our students get, like, a lot of really great internships here in the summertime.
Yes.
Is that process just very similar, or?
I think it is a similar process. And definitely the way you would prepare for an interview would be the same. Yes. Like, whether it's a full-time job, an internship, even an on-campus job, like, we encourage students to kind of prepare the same way for interviews. I
guess kind of to our point, like, what happens if you go blank? If you have pre-written down these questions and you don't have your notebook out, you can't remember them, I always lean into just asking the people who are interviewing about themselves. Why did they work at that company? What's something that excites them about their role? Because it can still help you get some insight into that organization, but also it gives you a moment to take a breath and then a moment to talk. And usually they enjoy working at that organization. So it also changes the tone to a very positive tone, so that when you're leaving, it's kind of in this upbeat, positive manner.
Yeah. I guess speaking to that, like, do you encourage a lot of questions around, like, the environment or the atmosphere? Because I feel like oftentimes I, just out of undergrad, was just like, I need any job, right? And it wasn't so much about, like, a really healthy job for me. It was like, I just need income. But I'm wondering if that's, like, something that you will talk to folks around, like, what are you looking for in a job that, like, would be really good for you? Is it, like, 9 to 5, or is it a little bit more low key? Is it, like, virtual versus like in person? I don't know. I'm curious, like, what you all would say.
I do think we talk to students about that. I think without any prior full-time experience, sometimes what you think you want might not be what you want, or what you need, you might not know you need. So we also encourage them, not to put too much emphasis on that. The best way to figure out what type of work environment you like is to get in there and start working. Yeah, exactly. And if you're like, I, at this stage in my life, could work more hours. I'd rather work more hours and move up. Or they could say, this is so much time and I'm not able to see my friends anymore. Maybe that isn't the right industry or job for them. So sometimes it can be hard to tell. I think if they've worked or interned somewhere before, and they know that coming in, we can also give them guidance on how you might look for that. So if they're looking for a relaxed culture and they get to the interview and everyone's wearing suits, maybe it's a relaxed culture, but the indicator might not be so. But there's also ways they can look it up online, check out Glassdoor, see what people who have worked there have said about it, to try to get a feel from the culture. But it is always hard to tell, I think.
I think it's hard to tell in the interview. And even what they're willing to share with you is their maybe ideal perception of the culture. Like that might not always be the real culture. So like I think you can ask about it, especially if that's important to you. Like if that's a really like important factor, sure. Like you can ask about it, but I think it doesn't always mean that's exactly how it's going to be. And to Kate's point, I think you can only really know maybe by talking to other people who work there. That's a great way to gain insight. See if the position keeps turning over, if the role keeps coming up. Not always the best sign unless they just have lots of that position out there. But like there are other maybe signs that can help you learn about like what it's like to work there.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would also just, not that I'm an expert in any way, but I've definitely interviewed quite often. I think the reverse is true. Like you should also be interviewing them, and you should also be looking to the environment that you walk into. Like, how does the receptionist treat you? Right? How does the person who's organizing like treat you and engage with you? I had an interview once. This was like maybe like 5 years ago, and they were like late to the thing, and like the person who was there like just completely missed and didn't even name that she made a mistake. And I was like, this is not a good sign. I was not feeling it. It was like a really high up position. I was like, well, I don't know. It's such a good position though. But then it happened like a second time where, oh, we have to reschedule because such and such, like, I think just double booked or something. And it was like, I'm not sure this is the right position for me because I don't have to be super organized, but I need a little bit more structure.
Don't want to pivot on the minute.
I know. I'm like, well, but also to not take ownership. I was very like understanding and empathetic. But if you're just willing to be like, oh yeah, like it almost blamed me. And I was like, no, it's here that we had a time set up and you just didn't show. Like that's, I mean, yes, you're just the HR person, but it's not a good sign.
Not a good sign.
I think trust your judgment or an impression.
I agree.
Like at any point, like I think you should trust that.
I do think there's a lot of office subcultures. Like even in our own office, I think your experience in our office varies based so much on your position. So to our point of like telling what it's like, you might be hearing the perspective of someone whose daily, day-to-day tasks are very different than yours. Might be a different culture to them. So you just got to get in there, and if it feels right, give it a try.
And what about just like interpersonal tips, like in the interview? Would you say like, and this is different because I obviously work in a clinical setting, but sometimes like students will just be looking in a different direction. I was like, no, here. So what are some like just body language things that like you feel like are hopefully just intuitive, but what are some things that they can do to sort of inspire confidence and to like feel like they're doing a really good job in that environment?
I think try to be self-aware of what you do. So with the practice, or like I talk with my hands, I'm doing it, right? But if I'm doing it too much, like just put them down. So just trying to be kind of self-aware of those things. And I also think if you are interviewing with more than one person, make sure you are making eye contact with all of them. Like don't only focus your answer on the person who asked. Like that is, I think sometimes students don't know and they don't want to be rude, but try to, acknowledge everyone in the room.
Yeah, definitely. I always say to kind of be the sunniest version of yourself. Like obviously you want to be authentic but you should be kind of excited and then kind of enthusiastic. This is an opportunity that you may want. So that has to come across in whatever way is true to how you would demonstrate that. So maybe it's how you talk, maybe it's using your hands. But having some way to show that enthusiasm, I think is important too.
Yeah, smiling.
Yeah.
I think even if you're on a phone call, people can tell in your voice if you're smiling or if you're like slouched down, like, or doing it laying down, like your voice changes. So like put yourself in a chair, smiling, pretend you are still engaging with someone. Cause I do think all of that comes across in an interview.
Yeah. That's a good point. I feel like sometimes you think, oh, I don't have to like get dressed and I don't have to do all these things. And so you feel like a little bit more relaxed environment if it's a phone or Zoom, right? So just really sort of tuning into like, showing like why you're interested not only through the words, but how you're like conveying them.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Definitely.
And tuning into like your own quirks. I was saying earlier that I say, when I get nervous, I say like and a lot. And so I have to like really tune into that. I'm like, I just said like, oh my God, I just said like again. So I don't use my hands as much, but I do say like a lot. So noticing those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm curious around, when someone finally does, get that job. I feel like it is a transition into like a professional world. What are some like tips that you have for people who are moving into like their first job? Or
I feel like we have so many tips.
There probably are.
One thing that we always talk about is that you're coming from an academic space, maybe with a lot of people in your own generation, especially if you're coming from a traditional undergraduate background and you're entering a space where potentially that is not most of the people you're being interacting with, or that's not most of the people who you work with on a day-to-day. So I think being pre-aware of that is very important. And a little bit rising to those expectations, maybe if they're outside of the norm of what you deem to be professional or you deem to be proactive, and making sure you're meeting the expectations of what those things look like with the people that you're working with, which I think is hard. Yeah. It's certainly, we talk a lot about it in our workspace. We definitely have, I think we're firmly in, 3 generations with solid representation in each of those. And that just being very mindful of that in the work that you're doing. We also talk a lot about being, like what being proactive looks like in a professional setting. Yeah. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Sure. I think, like, for example, if your supervisor gives you a task to do, like any kind of task, I think what Kate means by like being proactive is not just starting the task or being like, well, I reached out to that person. That's what you told me to do. But let's say that person doesn't respond or doesn't answer. I think a lot of times your supervisor means like keep doing that task until you get the result that they were looking for. But it's not usually explicitly stated. And I think that's where if students have been, especially in an academic setting, maybe their whole lives, and they're always kind of told when, like they know when that deadline is, or they're told kind of specific things to get a grade or to do that, but now there's the like measure of their performance isn't articulated, that can be hard to grasp. Like, am I doing a good job? But just being proactive, being like willing to take on things, giving people updates on what's going on. So it doesn't sound like we gave you something and we haven't heard from you in a week, right? Like communicate well, like that can really show, show your managers you're trying, and you're reliable and you're willing to like get something done.
We always talk about just being very enthusiastic and willing to do anything. So kind of to the point earlier, when you're coming into a job and there's a lot of people that have already been doing that work, sometimes the expectation with someone coming in new is that they're bringing new ideas, new enthusiasm, and new willingness to jump on board to everything. So that is like a subtle, unexplicitly stated expectation. So just being what they're hoping that you will be. If they're like, oh, we have this late night event, great, you're free. What can you contribute to that late night event? Oh, we have this new project. Do you need extra people to help on that? I can help on that. So really, there's a lot of reliance, I think, in all professional spaces and new people coming in with new enthusiasm and new ideas. So even though that's not stated anywhere, that is an expectation. So everyone's kind of hoping that's who you are when you walk in the door.
And take notes.
Yes.
Especially like in the beginning when you're maybe just in introduction meetings or someone's just telling you, take notes before someone asks you to write it down.
Yes.
Sometimes I might be working with someone, I'm like, are you writing this down? Like, not to be rude, but like we're saying a lot of things. Just know to write it down. Just bring your notepad. You know, I'm sure they have supplies at the office. Like make sure you know where those things are. Like just be ready to have those notes so that you can refer back to them, or so you can ask clarifying questions. Like it's okay to refer to them. That's great.
Yeah. I definitely think making sure it's okay to ask questions, right? It's like,
Yes.
like sometimes I would have folks who would make assumptions about like a task or make assumptions and then they wouldn't be doing it correctly.
Right.
And so, oh, well, if you would have told me that you didn't understand that, I would have clarified. You know, like sometimes I'm so in the work that I don't realize what someone coming in from outside might not know.
Yes.
And so you're like, oh, go do such and such. I don't want you to have to go figure that out newly, you know, like, no, we have systems in place. If you need a question, let me know. So I definitely think that's a good point to bring up, that it's okay to ask those questions. And, you know, I'd rather you ask me questions than go off and take 10 times as long or do it incorrectly. You have to like redo it.
Yeah. I also think for students like just first entering the workforce, like you should have meetings with your manager. Like I don't mean daily, but there should be some kind of regular cadence of check-in and knowing like when to ask questions too. Like you might have a manager who you could ask a question any time of the day, or they prefer a G chat, or they prefer a certain method, but like kind of try to get to know some of that, because absolutely ask questions. But also know like, should I put this like in agendas? Do I have a manager who just wants kind of a immediate question? And you can ask them their preference on that.
Yeah, I think that's really important.
I think I still ask questions.
Yeah.
I definitely, you know, I can think of like being told about a new project or initiative and I'm like, great. Yep. We get to the end and I'm like, okay, so what does PWTS stand for? And I'm on it as soon as you tell me what that is. So I don't know. I think it's questions forever. Yeah. Getting comfortable right when you get in there.
I think though I struggle with it myself because I'm someone who like, oh, I should know everything. So I'll just like write that down and go look that up.
Yeah.
And then like I may not get it right.
Yeah.
So like I think I'm projecting. But I definitely need to like do better at continuing to ask questions because it's not something that I'm completely comfortable with, you know, like, oh, well, like I should know this. I've been doing this for a really long time. Why don't I know this? So I think that's a good point for everybody, not just people newly in. Is there like, would you say there's a difference between folks who are newly like getting their first job with like first after like grad school? Like what would be the difference between the two that you notice the most?
I do think the expectation of professionalism, even if you went straight from undergrad to grad, if you're being hired into, we'll call it like an entry-level grad role, which would be different than an entry-level undergraduate role, the expectation that you're coming in with some of that professional skill is there, whether or not you have actually been in a full-time professional setting. So I think there is more emphasis on kind of hitting the ground running, maybe doing all the things we're saying right off the bat. Yeah. Versus I know when it's someone's first professional role, usually the role is kind of designed to like accommodate that and gets more nuanced at the grad setting.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I also think you're always going to learn on the job.
Yeah.
Like at any level. Like you still have to learn, even if you've been doing that job somewhere else, you need to learn like their process and the people and who does what here. So I think you're always learning. But yeah, totally agree that, you know, as you're at a more advanced degree, the expectations are a little bit higher as you enter.
Yeah, I think it takes, and this is me like with my own experience thinking about it, maybe like 6 months to really settle into a job and feel like you know. And even then, maybe a year before you know all the players and who you can contact and just kind of feeling comfortable.
Yes.
Hey, I think I know my job.
Yeah, I think it's totally a year. They always say like from an HR perspective, you're not really adding value to the year mark because you're still learning and figuring it out. And sure, you're adding some value, but you're also asking maybe more questions than you would normally ask and learning how to get things done. So I think it's a year.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Glad I wasn't too off there.
No, I love that.
I also think like don't give up on a job too soon.
Yes.
Right? Like even if you're just not feeling it after the first month, like give it some time. So your opinion might change or you need to start that job search. Yep. But you know, try to assess like maybe I will feel differently as time goes on.
Made me think of my first job out of grad school. I was at a homeless shelter and I was like an intake person and my job was in this space where the showers were and I would call people for like their showers.
Yeah.
And like literally like my office was right outside the shower and they would take these hot steaming showers and they also always didn't get clean.
Yeah.
And I knew almost instantaneously it was the wrong job for me. I was like, I cannot do this.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. So like I only had it for 4 months.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling a little like,
Sometimes
Yeah. And you have to write down those immediate resume bullets and transferable skills. So you're ready to go.
yeah, I don't think I put it on my resume.
Oh, see? You don't have to. You just say relevant experience.
I did wait until I got another job before I left, but I started looking like within
Pretty
a
quick.
month. I was like, I cannot do this. This
Yeah.
is not for me. And so I went directly because I was right out of grad school. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, well, I was just out of grad school, so I didn't have a job.
Yeah. The gaps are easier to explain, right? And I think that's to Kate's point. Like, you only have to feature your relevant experience, but also if you do have maybe big spans of time that like you just have nothing, you just have to think about how you tell that story.
Yeah. It was kind of a blip for me.
Yeah.
Now, I kind of skipped this. I went directly into, I have the job, but how do you navigate if you get like more than one offer or there's salary negotiations? I feel like I'm probably terrible at salary negotiation. I'm like, sure, whatever. I want to be more assertive when it comes to that.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your recommendation for navigating those like situations or circumstances?
I think a lot of times with job offers, I do find it's very, unless you're part of like a very formalized process, which we see more traditionally in banking, sometimes tech, where timelines are aligned. A lot of times outside of that, all of your offers don't come at once, which can be challenging. But we do recommend if there's a bunch in the final stages, especially if you get an offer from one, but right now you think a lead might be a different one, to let those companies know, hey, I've received an offer. I have to respond back in this time frame. Would you also be able to extend an offer? So like doing what you can, to your point, to be able to evaluate them collectively. But if you just have the one and you're going for that salary, we always say to stick to concrete things. Sometimes when people negotiate, they negotiate with things that are subjective or how they feel about certain things versus you having a graduate degree or you having an undergraduate internship in blank is not subjective. It existed. So like picking things to negotiate with that are tangible, that you can articulate the value of, I think can be really helpful. I know we always say to do it not in writing as well.
Right. A verbal negotiation generally goes better. You don't want to give them a lot of time and, their own AI systems to be able to give you a very articulated reason no, right? Like maybe, it gave you the time, but also putting them on the spot a little bit might actually go better. But bringing those facts, if you can bring in too that other companies are paying a certain amount, like you're researching the market and this is like $5,000 less or something, like bring in those actual numbers. It makes you more convincing.
Yeah. And I think we're always saying, it isn't a bartering process. So you really have that one time to ask. And maybe it's a specific ask. Maybe you're saying, I really am looking for blank. Or maybe it's just, hey, here's the level of experience that I have. Is there anything you can do in my compensation package to make this a better offer? Because maybe it isn't. Maybe they can't. Maybe budgets are set. There's nothing in compensation. Maybe there's some other flexibility. Maybe there's a way to contribute to retirement or additional vacation days.
Moving expenses.
Yes.
Like one-time amounts of money if they're not willing to budge on salary. If they outline a bonus structure, like ask about it. Like what is it? When would I be evaluated for it? Like is it percentage based on how the company's doing? Like you can ask those questions as part of like the negotiation, even if your offer number isn't something that they're willing to. I think start date's an easy one.
Yes.
It's like the last usually, but like students especially, they've just graduated in May. Sometimes start date is really important. Like if they're interviewing for something now and they're like, I just wish I had a few extra weeks off, now's the time to ask, right? Like don't accept the offer and then be like, oh, I wish I could go on vacation this summer. Like don't do that.
It's going to be a year before I potentially get
Yeah.
vacation. They don't realize that until afterwards.
Yeah. So like that's something kind of easy to negotiate. Like, but you start with the thing that matters most. And then to Kate's, you can pick maybe like one or two others. Like you can't go back and forth on every term of they're not going to like that.
Yeah. I feel like at times I've also heard folks like negotiating like in person versus virtual as well.
Mm.
I don't know if that's something that comes up often. It probably also depends on the industry and field, but yeah, I had someone who was, I want 4 days at home then if I'm not going to get paid. It's worth it to me if I don't have to show up in person. It's like, okay, yeah, I hadn't thought about using that as like a negotiation strategy.
I hadn't thought about that either. Surprised we haven't encountered that yet.
I don't know. Well, I feel like some places really just tell you what it is, like what their either policy or are they hybrid? Like some of it might seem like a standard, in which case, like for us, you're not negotiating that. It's a kind of standard. But I think it probably in some workplaces you
could.
Potentially could.
Yeah. So I thought it was interesting. Something I hadn't thought about. Yeah. I feel like there's so much with like the negotiation and trying to figure out what is right for you. I often also like to talk to students around like, well, benefits are also important.
Yes.
Like I don't think like as, students who are just getting out of undergrad, they've been on their parents' insurance and like I don't know that they always like realize like how important it is. Like they feel very adult when they're thinking about some of these things. Are there like things that you like basics that you talk to them about, like what's important when it comes to like benefits? And I don't know, those are just things that like I've heard students talk about.
Yeah. I mean, I think we talk to students about really assessing like that whole package and really any type of benefits, and also knowing before you're in the salary negotiation process, and this is something you could prepare at any time, even before you're getting an offer, of just like, what is that budget? Like, what is that number that you need to make to live in whatever city you want to live in? And if it is like, because we're in New York City, and students, whatever their situation is, just knowing like, what is a standard like rent? Like, what are the things that I will need to budget for, whether you're doing that now or not? And then will that salary afford you those things? So like, what is that number that you're looking for? And I guess also, fortunately, positions in New York City will post a range, right? So like now is actually, I think, to a lot of people's advantages if they're looking here. Where you can really get an idea of what kinds of the same position at different companies do have differences.
Yeah. So what are some of the services? I mean, you talked a little bit about it, but I'm curious if you can share a little bit more about all the different things that students have access to through Wasserman, just because you all like are amazing, but I'm sure there's more of you.
Yes, there are many more of us.
So what kind of things do you like provide? I heard the, mock interviews, video recordings. What are some other things?
There's many. I guess I'll start off with our coaching.
Sure.
So we have coaching teams that specialize both in undergraduate and graduate students, but also in different industry areas. So if you're looking into a particular industry, you can actually seek out a coach in that space. I think coaching, to what you just said about mock interviews, really serves a variety of functions. So that could be a good explore conversation through actually a salary negotiation, through a how do I do my best at my new professional setting conversation. So we always say coaching is really for any career-related questions whatsoever. So that's our coaching services. What service do you want to talk about next?
We have lots of different events as well. So from workshops where someone, in a group setting is learning about a resume or learning about like an interview. We have a ton of different panels and networking events, which is great when alumni come back or recruiters and different professionals come in and talk directly to our students about what it's like to work in those industries, or they're promoting positions. So just engaging with we have over 500 events a year.
Yes.
Probably. Like there's probably during the academic year one every day, Monday through Friday. Like something is going on that you could engage with right on campus or virtually. We have a lot of virtual services as well. And you want to talk about our tools?
Yes. So we have a lot of virtual tools. One was the interviewing, doing a mock interview online. So our virtual tools are available 24/7, which is really helpful because if you find you have time to engage in career services at 11 p.m., there's still something for you, even if the center isn't available. And those, same thing, run the full scope of tools that can help you really differentiate between industries of interest, find your own specific area that you want to explore, or explore all the areas if you're not sure where to start. Deep dive into certain industries. So if you do find, hey, I think I'm interested in this one, learning more about it, tools that help you through the interview process, through the resume writing process, through each unique process in the job search. Yeah. And then, overall, we have tools that are also embedded in their just day-to-day interaction with the center. So we use a job platform that houses all of this information, which is kind of unique in an educational environment. So they actually log into that to view all of our content. But I'm trying to think, what do you want to talk about? Some of our employer stuff?
Sure. We offer a lot of career fairs. So I feel like that's maybe something that a student might hear about, or they're like, oh, I expect a career center to have a career fair. That is, many different ones per year, some by industry. Some are mixed industries, but are, a different level, like an internship fair or full-time job fair. And it's a great way for a student to just get a little information from a recruiter directly, like make a contact, and have an opportunity to follow up and learn about a position that's open. Usually they're advertising specific roles if they're coming. But it's also great if students want to engage with employers in something like a coffee chat. Like having a casual conversation that's maybe 15 minutes or 30 minutes. And whether that's on campus, we offer some things like that through our office, or they can work with us to, develop their networking strategy and learn how to reach out to alumni and learn how to kind of set those things up. Networking is a great kind of tool that we really encourage.
A skill that not everyone has that needs to be developed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm also wondering if you have like specific events or services for students who are international, because I know we have a huge population who are here and they have like a certain amount of time before they need to find a job here. But I'm wondering if there's anything targeted towards them.
Yes. Yeah. Both tools. So like specific platforms that can help students identify either companies who have sponsored H-1Bs in the past, or help with a global search. So really thinking about like, where do they want to be in the world and for any of our students. So like we do have platforms that can help with that. We also have a variety of different events that are specifically towards like the OPT or CPT process, or the process of essentially work authorization for international students if they want to stay in the U.S. And we work closely with the OGS office too to kind of put together some programming there.
That's great. Yeah. Anything else that we have left out that you feel like we should talk about as a reference point for folks who are looking for jobs or internships?
I think the only other thing I was thinking of as we went through this conversation is either in getting a job or an internship, we find some level of experience is helpful. So we have like a facet of our office that manages experiential learning. And there's many places to get experiential learning, not just through something at Wasserman, but something that could really be on your resume, something you could use when you're networking, something you could talk about in an interview. So we have platforms where you could do a micro internship, or you could work on a project, but for an organization. So it has that element of professionalism. We have opportunities to engage in like industry challenges. We've had presentation competitions where you can get an award through that. I'm trying to think of other ways. There's a great, NYU has a lot of undergraduate research opportunities, and gaining experiential learning through that is excellent. But any way to gain that professional experience, and it doesn't have to be just through a traditional internship space, or through an on-campus job, any way to get out there and get that experience, we find that that's really essential and a big asset for our students when they're looking for those next steps.
That's great. I didn't know about all of those things.
Yeah.
There's lots of ways to build experience.
Yes.
I think the point is like you just want to be trying things.
Yes.
And really starting to build experience really as early as you can. Students will ask like, well, when can I get my first internship, or when can I do that? Like whenever you want, like whenever you're ready.
Yeah. Whenever you have the time.
Yeah. Like you can start at any point.
And like a part-time job is experience. It doesn't have to be an internship. Like anything that you're doing will impact you. Yeah.
And my last question is how long can folks work with you all? Do you work with alumni? Like, can they come back and be like, hey, lost this job, so need a new one? Like,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we hope none of them ever lose their jobs, but
maybe layoff, or maybe they would left because it was toxic. I don't know.
So actually in their first year after graduation, they stay within those coaching teams. So if you graduated with an undergraduate degree, you stay with our undergraduate team, and a graduate degree with our graduate team for a full year. And then you roll over to our alumni services. But there is lifetime access. So a lot of our students, hope to and do find opportunities within like 3 months of graduating. So we find that we don't want to move them in the middle of that process. So we try to stay with them for a full year after to make sure they get that first destination, they feel confident in their first steps. And maybe, to your point, like maybe there is a pivot that's needed in that first year. It can happen. So that we're there with them through that. And then our alumni career services team takes over. And that's lifetime. So come back whenever.
Well, that's good. Thank you both so much for being here. I feel like a little bit updated since my last job search. Not that I'm looking, but just to say that I feel like I know a little bit more. Thank you both for joining me.
Yes.
Thanks for having us.
Yes. Thank you so much.
If you have questions about the podcast or anything that we've talked about today, please feel free to email us at goodsex.podcast@nyu.edu. We monitor this inbox during business hours and usually reply within 3 to 4 days. Since we can't cover everything in one episode, there may be some things that we missed, got it wrong, or it landed the wrong way. If so, please feel free to let us know. You can also check out our show notes for links to organizations, articles, books, and videos mentioned in this episode. If you're an NYU student and have questions about your sexual health, you can connect with our Student Health Center Sexpert at sexpert@nyu.edu or book an appointment through the Student Health Portal. If you have an urgent mental health concern, safety issues, or you are worried about someone that might have caused harm to you or you might have caused harm to someone, then you can contact NYU's Confidential Wellness Exchange at 212-443-9999. Chat with them using their mobile app or email them at wellness.exchange@nyu.edu. For any non-NYU listeners, then you can call the National Hotline on Sexual Assault at 1-800-656-4673 or the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. Thanks for listening. Tune in next time, and don't forget to subscribe for more Good Sex at NYU.